All right, let's dive in. We're going to take a snapshot of one of the world's most complex, most fascinating nations. And our lens for this? It's just a single 24-hour period.
So think about it for a second. Can a single day's news really tell you what's going on in a country with 1.4 billion people? I mean, is that even possible? Well, we're going to give it a shot.
And here's how we're going to do it. We're looking at a hypothetical day, let's call it August 11th, 2025, as a kind of national stress test. The idea is to see where the pressure is coming from, both from the outside and from within, and what that tells us about how India holds up under all that strain. Okay, so first up, let's talk about the pressure coming from the outside. We're talking about those big geopolitical and economic headwinds that India is constantly dealing with. And boom, right out of the gate, a major pressure point. The U.S. slaps a massive 50% tariff on Indian goods. Now, the official reason given is India's ongoing purchase of Russian oil, which, puts it right at odds with American foreign policy. But that number, 50%? That's not just a statistic. That is a huge shock to what's supposed to be a really critical trade relationship.
And you can bet the reaction in India was fast. Social media just exploded with calls to boycott these huge American brands. It's kind of wild, right? How these everyday names, companies you see everywhere, suddenly become the front line in a big geopolitical fight. It really kicked off this huge national conversation about self-reliance.
But it's not all just public anger and boycotts. See, behind the scenes, there's another story playing out. You've got Indian lawmakers scrambling to keep those trade talks with the U.S. moving forward. They're trying to find some kind of diplomatic way out of this, even while this trade war is really starting to boil over. So, just as all this economic pressure is ramping up, a whole different kind of external threat pops up. The army chief of Pakistan, while he's actually visiting the U.S., drops this bombshell of a statement. And for many, there was no mistaking it. This was seen as a thinly veiled nuclear threat aimed squarely at India.
India's response? It was immediate and it was sharp. They called it irresponsible nuclear saber rattling. So just think about that for a second. In one single day, you've got the country getting hit with intense pressure from two totally different directions. One economic, the other military. That's a lot to handle.
Okay, now let's shift our gaze. We're going to turn our focus inward, because this stress test isn't just about what's happening on the outside. It's also shining a pretty bright light on the social and political cracks right there at home. And here is a perfect example of that internal friction. The Supreme Court issues a ruling. All of Delhi's stray dogs have to be moved to shelters, permanently. Well, that decision immediately kicks off major protests at the iconic India Gate. Suddenly, you have this huge, passionate clash between animal rights groups and the highest court in the country, all debating animal welfare versus public policy. And at the very same time, a huge political storm is brewing. Opposition parties are out in force, protesting a really fast revision of the voter lists. Their claim? That it's a deliberate move to strip the poor of their right to vote. The quote from one opposition leader really captures the anger, calling it an institutionalized theft of voting rights. I mean, this goes right to the heart of the democratic process. So, you've got these massive pressures, right? But how does that stuff actually show up in everyday life? Well, sometimes it's the weird, smaller stories that really show you where the cracks in the system are. Get this. The police bust a group of scammers who set up a totally fake police force. I'm not kidding. They called it the International Police Bureau. They rented an office, they had a website, the whole 9 yards, all to scare people into giving them donations. It's an absolutely wild story for sure. But for our stress test, it's a really interesting piece of data. It shows just how easily the symbols of authority can be faked and used to prey on people's trust. And here's a moment where you see all these different pressures just slam into each other. Air India suddenly has to suspend a major flight route from Delhi to Washington. And why? Well, it's a mix of things. You've got internal problems, like issues with their planes, and you've got that external geopolitical tension, specifically Pakistani airspace being closed. It's just a perfect, real-world example of how those big, abstract problems can mess with everyday life and business. Okay, so we've walked through this 24-hour stress test. What does it all mean?
Let's try and pull all these different threads together and see what picture emerges.
What you get is this picture of a nation that is just juggling an insane number of things all at once. I mean, think about it. In just one day, we saw a global trade war, a nuclear threat from a neighbor, fiery domestic protests, intense political fights, and even these weird systemic failures that affect regular people. It's a lot.
And that really brings us to the big question, doesn't it? When you see all these fractures, all these stress points pop up in just 24 hours, does that mean the country is weak? Or does it actually show the opposite? Does it reveal this incredible, maybe even chaotic resilience that's needed to hold a nation of 1.4 billion people together day in and day out? That's really the question that a stress test like this leaves you with.